Rise, my apprentice.
Our story begins on Dathomir. Maul prepared a potion infused with the Night Sister's knowledge, a concoction meant to reveal the future to those who consumed it. As the eerie green liquid simmered, Maul handed a portion to Ezra, his eyes gleaming with hidden intentions. Reluctantly, Ezra accepted the potion. Together, they consumed the ancient brew, allowing its mystical power to wash over them. The world around them faded, replaced by visions of the past, present, and future. In his vision, Maul saw a familiar desert landscape, the twin suns of Tatooine casting long shadows over the sands. There, in the distance, stood his old nemesis, Obi-Wan Kenobi. The sight of the Jedi stirred a deep, burning rage within Maul, but before he could focus on his hatred, the vision shifted. Ezra, on the other hand, saw something entirely different. A young boy, no more than a teenager, with blonde hair and bright blue eyes, appeared before him. Here was an innocence about him, a raw potential that had yet to be shaped. A name echoed in Ezra's mind, Skywalker. As their visions intertwined, Maul too saw the boy and recognized the name instantly. His mind raced with possibilities. This was no ordinary boy. This was the son of the Chosen One, the offspring of Anakin Skywalker, the very key to his revenge and possibly the end of the Sith. The visions faded and Maul was left in the dim light of the temple, his heart pounding with the knowledge he had just gained. A new plan began to form in his mind, a plan that would involve the boy named Skywalker. Maul's initial goal was singular and obsessive: to find and kill Obi-Wan Kenobi, the man who had taken everything from him. The vision he shared with Ezra only intensified this desire, reminding him of the deep wound that had never healed. But now, with the revelation of the boy named Skywalker, Maul's ambition expanded beyond mere revenge. The son of the Chosen One, a being of immense potential and untapped power, was far more than just a boy. He was a weapon, a key that could unlock the future Maul desired, a future where he, not the Sith, held the reins of power. The possibilities were intoxicating. If he could train the boy, mold him into his apprentice, Maul could tip the scales of the galaxy in his favor. The more he thought about it, the more it made sense. Without a word to Ezra, Maul turned his focus on Tatooine, the barren desert planet that had once seemed so insignificant. Now, it was the most important place in the galaxy, for it held the future in the form of a boy named Luke Skywalker. Leaving Ezra behind, Maul made his preparations. The young Jedi would be of no use to him on this new path. Ezra was a distraction, a potential threat even, and Maul could not afford to have any loose ends. As Maul's ship hurtled through hyperspace toward Tatooine, the former Sith Lord retreated to a quiet corner of the vessel. Closing his eyes, Maul allowed his mind to drift into the Force, envisioning the confrontation he had dreamed of for so long. His final battle with Obi-Wan Kenobi. The arid sands of Tatooine spread out before him, and there, standing resolute as ever, was Kenobi, older now, but still carrying that same calm confidence that had always infuriated Maul. With a snarl, Maul ignited his crimson lightsaber and lunged at his enemy. The clash was fierce, a blur of red and blue light in the desert twilight. Yet no matter how many times Maul replayed the battle in his mind, the outcome was always the same. Kenobi, with his measured movements and precise strikes, would counter every attack. And each time, Maul saw himself falling, defeated into the sands, his life extinguished by the one man he despised above all others. The visions tormented him. Again and again, he would rise, attack, and fall. Each defeat only stoked the fires of his rage, yet it also deepened his sense of despair. How could this be? How could he, once the apprentice of the Dark Lord of the Sith, fail so miserably, even in his own mind? Doubt gnawed at Maul's soul. He had always prided himself on his strength, his cunning, and his will to survive. But now, as the visions of his death played out over and over, Maul began to question everything. What if he wasn't strong enough? What if his purpose was a lie, driven by nothing more than a hollow need for revenge that would ultimately lead to his own destruction? For the first time in years, Maul felt a flicker of fear, not fear of death, but fear of failure, of dying without accomplishing anything, of being remembered as nothing more than a tool used and discarded by the Sith. Haunted by the visions of his repeated failures, Maul knew he needed to regain his edge, something more than raw hatred and cunning. He needed knowledge, power, and the kind of strength that could only come from the darkest corners of the Force. His thoughts turned to the one being who had once embodied that power, his former master, Darth Sidious. Deep within the bowels of his ship, Maul accessed a hidden compartment, retrieving a small, ancient holoprojector. This device held recordings he had secretly copied during his time as Sidious's apprentice. Though Maul had long since broken free from Sidious's control, he could not deny the power his master wielded, the power that had once crushed him so thoroughly. Activating the device, Maul watched as the ghostly image of Darth Sidious flickered to life. The recordings were filled with dark teachings, lessons that Sidious had imparted during their time together. Each word dripped with malice, yet they also carried the secrets to greater power, secrets Maul had not fully understood until now. Sidious's voice echoed through the chamber, cold and calculating, as he spoke of the true nature of the dark side. He explained how fear, anger, and hatred could be harnessed to bend the Force to one's will, to grow stronger than any Jedi who would dare stand in the way. Maul listened intently, absorbing every detail, every nuance of his former master's teachings. The recordings revealed more than just techniques. They spoke of the mindset required to wield the dark side with absolute control. Sidious emphasized the importance of patience, of not letting rage cloud one's judgment. A clear mind, he taught, was just as powerful as a fierce heart. It was this combination that made the dark side unstoppable. As Maul studied the recordings, he felt the flicker of doubt within him begin to wane. The teachings of Sidious reignited the fire in his soul, reminding him of the power he still held. He practiced the exercises, visualized the techniques, and let the dark side flow through him, strengthening his resolve. The more he studied, the more Maul's confidence returned. He could see the path ahead with greater clarity. He was not just a former Sith seeking revenge. He was a dark warrior, capable of mastering the Force in ways few others could. Kenobi was still a formidable opponent, but Maul now believed he had the tools to overcome him. Tatooine's twin suns blazed overhead as Maul's ship descended into the endless dunes of the desert planet. The familiar heat and desolation greeted him as he stepped onto the scorching sands, his senses immediately attuned to the Force. He knew that somewhere in this vast wasteland, his old nemesis, Obi-Wan Kenobi, was hiding. The challenge was finding him. Maul began his search, scouring the barren landscape with a determination that bordered on obsession. The desert was unforgiving, with its treacherous terrain and the ever-present danger of sandstorms. But Maul was relentless. He pushed forward, relying on the Force to guide him, feeling its subtle pull as he moved through the endless stretches of sand. Days turned into nights, and Maul's search continued without rest. He reached out with the Force, probing the farthest corners of the desert for any sign of Kenobi. The Force was elusive, offering only the faintest hints, as if taunting him with the knowledge that Kenobi was near yet still out of reach. Maul's frustration grew with each passing day, but so did his resolve. He knew that Kenobi would not be easy to find. The Jedi Master was a master of concealment, especially in a place like this, yet Maul could feel the dark side surging within him, urging him onward, reminding him of his purpose. Finally, after days of tireless searching, Maul's perseverance paid off. He felt a shift in the Force, a subtle disturbance that signaled the presence of another powerful Force user nearby. Following the sensation, Maul moved swiftly across the dunes, his eyes scanning the horizon. As the suns began to set, casting long shadows over the desert, Maul saw it, a small, isolated dwelling nestled among the rocks, barely visible against the landscape. The air around it thrummed with the presence of the Force, and Maul knew he had found his quarry. Kenobi was here. As Maul approached the small, humble dwelling, he was struck by the sight of Obi-Wan Kenobi. The man who had once been a formidable Jedi Knight, a beacon of the Republic, now appeared as nothing more than a weary hermit, cloaked in worn robes and living a life of solitude in the harsh desert. The contrast between this frail figure and the memory of the powerful warrior Maul had faced years ago was jarring. A rat in the desert, Maul thought, a bitter smile curling his lips. How the mighty had fallen. Yet as Maul drew closer, he sensed the strength still hidden within Kenobi, a quiet, resolute power that had not diminished with time. The years had aged Kenobi, but they had also honed him, and Maul knew better than to underestimate his old foe. The two stood facing each other, the desert winds swirling around them, carrying with it the weight of their shared history. There were no words exchanged. They both understood that this was the end of a long, winding road. It would be settled here in the sands of Tatooine. Kenobi's lightsaber ignited with a snap hiss, the blue blade illuminating the twilight. Maul's own red blade followed suit, casting an ominous glow. Kenobi assumed the familiar opening stance of Form 3 Seresu, the defensive form that had served him well in countless battles. Maul recognized it immediately and responded with a more aggressive stance, his mind racing with strategies to break through Kenobi's defenses. But then, Kenobi did something unexpected. In a fluid motion, he shifted his stance to Form 4 Ataru, the aggressive acrobatic form favored by Qui-Gon Jinn. The Jedi Maul had slain all those years ago. Maul's eyes narrowed as he realized what Kenobi was attempting to do. He was baiting Maul, trying to lure him into repeating the fatal mistake that had cost Qui-Gon his life. Maul's mind flashed back to that fateful duel in the Theed hangar. He could see Qui-Gon's determined face, hear the hum of the lightsabers, and feel the thrill of victory as he had delivered the killing blow. Kenobi was counting on Maul's arrogance, on his desire to relive that moment, but Maul was no longer the same Sith apprentice. He had learned from his past, first from every failure, and he would not fall into the same trap. As Kenobi moved to initiate the attack, Maul feigned the move he had used to kill Qui-Gon, a rapid strike intended to bait Kenobi into a predictable counter, and it worked. Kenobi, driven by the memory of his fallen master, instinctively responded with a maneuver to block the strike, just as Maul had anticipated. In that split second, Kenobi's guard faltered, and Maul saw the opening he needed. With a swift, decisive motion, Maul delivered a fatal blow, his red blade slicing through the air and striking true. The battle, if it could even be called that, was over in mere seconds. Kenobi staggered, his lightsaber falling from his grasp as he collapsed to the ground, the life fading from his eyes. Maul stood over his fallen enemy, breathing heavily, his emotions a tumultuous mix of triumph and emptiness. He had won. He had finally avenged himself. Yet as he looked down at Kenobi's lifeless form, Maul realized that the victory he had sought for so long brought him no satisfaction, no closure. The battle had ended with a single swing, and with it, a chapter of Maul's life had closed. With Obi-Wan Kenobi dead, Maul felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness, but he quickly pushed those emotions aside. There was still much to be done. His true pride, the son of the Chosen One, awaited him, and Maul knew he had to approach this carefully. Luke Skywalker could not be simply taken. He had to be won over, manipulated into seeing Maul as an ally, even a mentor. This would require patience, cunning, and ruthlessness. Maul made his way to the outskirts of the moisture farm where Luke lived with his aunt and uncle. For several days, he camped out in the desolate terrain, using the Force to mask his presence while he observed the family's daily routines. It didn't take long for him to understand the rhythm of their lives. The early mornings, the long hours tending to the moisture evaporators, the meals shared in the quiet of their home. Luke was young, full of energy and curiosity, but Maul could see the longing in the boy's eyes, the restlessness that came from a desire for something more than this simple life. This was something Maul could use, a vulnerability he could exploit. But first, the boy needed to be separated from his family, isolated so that he would have no one to turn to but Maul. Maul traveled to Mos Eisley, the bustling hive of scum and villainy, where credits could buy anything, including silence. There, he sought out a group of mercenaries, men with no scruples and no questions, only the promise of a payday. Maul didn't need to explain much. He simply offered them a substantial reward to eliminate the two moisture farmers on the outskirts of the desert. They accepted without hesitation, knowing that such a job would be easy for them. Luke Skywalker slept soundly, unaware of the dark forces that had set their sights on his simple life. The mercenaries, hired by Maul, moved with practiced stealth, slipping through the shadows toward the modest homestead where Luke's aunt and uncle slept. The quiet of the night was broken by the muffled sounds of violence as blaster fire filled the air. In seconds, the mercenaries had completed their mission, leaving the lifeless bodies of Owen and Beru Lars behind. Luke, jolted awake by the commotion, stumbled out of his room, his heart pounding in his chest as he faced the unimaginable scene before him. He barely had time to register what had happened before the mercenaries turned their attention to him. Panic surged through him as he realized he was their next target. But just as quickly as the threat appeared, a new figure stepped into the fray, a dark silhouette in the doorway. Maul, with the precision of a seasoned warrior, moved through the room, his lightsaber flashing in lethal arcs. The mercenaries, caught off guard, fell swiftly under his assault, their lives snuffed out in an instant. Luke stood frozen, his mind reeling from the shock and horror. The bodies of the mercenaries, who had just taken everything from him, now lay at the feet of the man who had saved him. In the midst of the chaos, a strange sense of relief mingled with the grief that threatened to overwhelm him. Maul turned toward Luke, his presence commanding and almost protective. The boy's wide eyes were full of confusion and fear, but in the absence of any other guidance, a flicker of trust began to form. The loss of his family left Luke vulnerable, and with nowhere else to turn, he found himself drawn to the dark figure who had so decisively ended the threat. With a steady hand, Maul reached out to Luke, a gesture that spoke of a promise, one of protection, guidance, and something more. Luke, still dazed and searching for something to hold on to, accepted the unspoken offer. Together, they left the ruined homestead behind, the bond between them forged in the crucible of loss and violence. Maul's plan had unfolded perfectly. The boy was now under his influence, and with Luke at his side, the path to his final revenge became clearer than ever. Luke Skywalker trained under Maul's watchful eye for years, growing from a young, uncertain boy into a formidable warrior. By the age of 20, Luke had surpassed Maul in raw power and skill. Yet, the dynamics of their relationship were anything but typical for a master and apprentice. From the beginning, Maul had treated Luke as an equal, fostering a bond of camaraderie rather than dominance. This unconventional approach created an unspoken pact between them. Luke never sought to challenge Maul for superiority, nor did he desire to. Instead, he saw Maul as a friend, an ally, and the man who had saved his life. This bond of mutual respect and friendship kept Luke from ever aspiring to the role of master. He was content with their partnership, seeing Maul not as an obstacle to overcome, but as a companion on a shared journey. Maul, in turn, had achieved something he had never thought possible. He had gained the loyalty and trust of the son of the Chosen One, not through manipulation or fear, but through a genuine, albeit twisted, sense of kinship. During these years, Maul did more than just train Luke. He also set about rebuilding his criminal empire, drawing upon his vast experience and the newfound strength he now wielded with Luke at his side. The galaxy was in turmoil, with the Empire and the Rebel Alliance locked in a fierce struggle. This chaos provided the perfect cover for Maul's ambitions. The authorities were too distracted to notice the resurgence of a powerful new syndicate operating in the shadows. Maul and Luke cut through their enemies with ease, their combined strength unmatched in the criminal underworld. Maul's new organization grew rapidly, feeding off the chaos and disarray that the war between the Empire and the Rebels had sown across the galaxy. With each victory, Maul solidified his power, building an empire that rivaled anything he had ever controlled in his past life. Maul's resurgence in the criminal underworld was nothing short of meteoric. With Luke at his side, his influence spread rapidly across the galaxy, seizing control of key trade routes, establishing powerful alliances, and crushing any rivals who dared challenge him. The syndicate he built was a force to be reckoned with, and its rise did not go unnoticed. The growing power of Maul's organization soon attracted the attention of the most dangerous figure in the galaxy, Emperor Palpatine. The Emperor, ever watchful of potential threats to his rule, dispatched spies to investigate the source of this newfound power. It didn't take long for them to uncover the truth. Maul was not only alive, but had taken on an apprentice, and that apprentice was none other than Luke Skywalker, the son of Anakin Skywalker, now known as Darth Vader. The news that Vader had a son, and that this son had been hidden from him, was a revelation that shook the Emperor to his core. It was a secret of monumental proportions, one that could disrupt the delicate balance of power he had carefully maintained. But rather than panic, Palpatine saw an opportunity. If he could bring Luke into the fold, the boy could serve as a powerful tool to further his own ends. But first, Maul had to be eliminated. The Emperor summoned Vader, his most trusted enforcer, and delivered the news with calculated precision. Vader was tasked with hunting down Maul and retrieving his son. The revelation that Luke was his child ignited a storm of emotions within Vader: rage, confusion, and a burning need for answers. Who had hidden this truth from him? Who had known about his son and kept him in the dark? As Vader set out on his mission, his mind was consumed by these questions. His investigation led him down a path that uncovered the carefully guarded secrets of his past. He discovered that Luke had been taken by Obi-Wan Kenobi after Padme's death and hidden on Tatooine at the Lars homestead, the very place where Anakin's own mother had lived and died. The more Vader uncovered, the deeper his fury grew. The Lars family, who had sheltered his son, were dead, killed by men hired by Maul. Vader's relentless pursuit of Maul and Luke led him across the galaxy, cutting through anyone who dared to stand in his way. His arrival was always marked by destruction, leaving a trail of bodies and shattered defenses as he drew closer to his quarry. No one could stop him, no one could even slow him down. The Dark Lord of the Sith was on a mission, and nothing short of death would prevent him from reaching his goal. Finally, Vader tracked them down. He could feel the dark side radiating from Luke, a power that had grown significantly under Maul's tutelage. It was potent, raw, and perhaps even stronger than his own. Vader's mind raced with the possibilities, but he remained focused on the task at hand. He had to confront them both to reveal the truth and claim his son. The confrontation was inevitable. In the cold, dimly lit chamber where Maul and Luke awaited him, Vader made his entrance, his presence commanding and terrifying. Luke, standing beside Maul, was a formidable figure, no longer the boy he once was, but a warrior steeped in the dark side. Yet even in his power, there was uncertainty, a shadow of doubt that Vader intended to exploit. With a voice filled with cold resolve, Vader revealed the truth that had been kept from Luke for so long. He spoke of the Lars homestead, of how Maul had sent men to murder Luke's aunt and uncle, the only family he had ever known. The revelation hit Luke like a blow, but before he could fully process it, Vader delivered the final piece of the puzzle, the truth of his parentage. Vader was not just some Dark Lord, he was Luke's father. Maul, sensing the shift in Luke's emotions, immediately tried to counteract Vader's words. He painted the Dark Lord as a master of deception, accusing him of lying to sow discord between them. But Luke was no longer the naive boy Maul had once manipulated. The Force was strong within him, and it guided his instincts. He could sense the truth in Vader's words, and more importantly, the deceit in Maul's. The man Luke had looked up to, the one who had saved him and trained him, was suddenly unmasked as a liar and a murderer. Betrayal surged through him, turning his heart against Maul. The connection they had once shared, built on trust and camaraderie, was shattered in an instant. Maul, realizing the danger he was in, did what he always did when the odds turned against him. He sought to escape. He summoned his loyal men into the chamber, ordering them to attack both Vader and Luke, hoping to create enough chaos to cover his retreat. The room erupted in violence, but Maul had no intention of staying to see how the battle would end. As his men were cut down, Maul slipped away, leaving them to die in a futile attempt to delay the inevitable. His thoughts were only of survival, of escaping the wrath of the two Skywalkers who were now united, at least in their desire to see him dead. But Maul knew that this time he had truly lost. The apprentice he had nurtured, the power he had cultivated, had all turned against him. And now, with the past fully exposed, he had nowhere left to hide. United by their shared purpose, Vader and Luke made their way to the heart of the Empire, the Emperor's throne room. The atmosphere was thick with tension, the air practically crackling with the dark energy that radiated from the two Skywalkers. The Emperor, sensing their arrival, awaited them with a mix of anticipation and trepidation. He had foreseen many possibilities, but the power Luke now wielded was beyond anything even he had anticipated. The confrontation began with an intensity that shook the very foundations of the chamber. Vader and Luke, now allies, moved against the Emperor with a coordinated ferocity. The dark side flowed through them both, their combined strength formidable. Luke in particular was a force to be reckoned with, his power fueled by the betrayal, rage, and dark training he had endured under Maul. The Emperor, though immensely powerful, found himself challenged in a way he had not expected. Luke's raw potential, sharpened by his connection to both his father and the dark side, made him a threat even to the ancient Sith Lord. The duel raged on, with the Emperor matching their every strike, his mastery of the Force allowing him to keep them at bay. But as the battle wore on, it became clear that the Emperor was not invincible. Vader, despite his power, was growing weary, and the Emperor, ever the tactician, seized upon this weakness. With a ruthless strike, the Emperor turned his attention to Vader, delivering a fatal blow that cut through the Dark Lord's defenses. Vader fell, his mechanical breathing faltering as he crumpled to the floor. The sight of his father's death ignited something primal within Luke, a surge of dark energy so powerful that it eclipsed anything he had felt before. The loss, the anger, the betrayal, all coalesced into a single devastating force. Luke's power skyrocketed, the dark side swelling within him until it overwhelmed even the Emperor. The young Skywalker, now more powerful than ever, turned his full fury on the Sith Lord. The Emperor, caught off guard by the sheer intensity of Luke's assault, found himself outmatched for the first time in his long reign. In a final, brutal exchange, Luke overpowered the Emperor, his strength surpassing that of the ancient Sith. The Emperor, who had manipulated the galaxy for decades, fell before the wrath of the Chosen One's son. With one decisive strike, Luke ended the reign of the Sith Lord, bringing an end to the tyranny that had plagued the galaxy for so long. The throne room fell silent, the echoes of battle fading into nothingness. Luke stood alone, the last of the Sith, having fulfilled the dark destiny that had been set in motion the day he was born. With the Emperor dead and the Empire leaderless, chaos quickly spread throughout the galaxy. The once mighty Empire, now fractured and weakened by the ongoing war with the Rebel Alliance, began to crumble. Luke Skywalker, though now one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, had no interest in assuming control of the shattered regime. His focus had shifted, his purpose now driven by something far more personal. As the New Republic began to form, Luke was unexpectedly recognized as a hero. Despite his deep connection to the dark side, he had done nothing to harm the rebels and in fact had struck down the Emperor, the greatest threat to their cause. This act alone earned him a place in the annals of galactic history as a pivotal figure in the Empire's downfall. During this time of transition, Luke discovered a truth that would change his life once more. He had a sister, Leia. The revelation of their bond quickly drew them together, and the siblings forged a powerful connection. Luke, seeing in Leia the potential to wield the Force, convinced her to study it as he had been taught by Maul. He believed that together, they could strengthen the New Republic and prepare for the challenges ahead. Leia, however, chose a different path. While Luke remained firmly entrenched in the dark side, Leia embraced a more balanced approach, becoming a Grey Jedi. She walked the line between light and dark, drawing from both sides of the Force without succumbing to the extremes of either. Together, they became the most formidable Force users in the galaxy, their power unmatched by any who would challenge them. But Luke's thoughts were never far from revenge. He knew that Maul, the architect of his transformation, was still out there, hidden in the shadows. The power vacuum left by the Empire's collapse created an opportunity for Maul's criminal syndicate to seize control, a possibility that Luke could not allow. He vowed to find Maul and end the threat once and for all. Maul, now much older and a shadow of his former self, had been forced into hiding. He knew that returning to the galactic stage would mean certain death at the hands of his former apprentice. But Luke's determination was relentless, and after years of searching, he finally tracked Maul down. Fittingly, their final confrontation took place on Tatooine, the planet where Luke's journey had begun and where Maul had first set his plans into motion. There was no epic duel this time, no drawn-out battle of wills. Maul, now an old man, was no match for the powerful Sith Lord Luke had become. The end came swiftly, with Luke delivering the final blow that ended Maul's long, tumultuous life. With Maul's death, the last loose end of Luke's past was tied up. The man who had shaped him into the warrior he was, who had unleashed his dark potential, was gone. Luke had become the very force of destruction Maul had once sought to create, and in doing so, had sealed Maul's fate.